I guess, but I don't know if I would like it. I'm going. Okay. Don't worry. I bet you'll make tons of friends. And what grade are you in? Yep, that's right. Yep, except for our teacher hasn't taught us anything. Yeah, that's all right. You'll learn something. They'll start soon. It's probably just the first, or no, you started last week. Probably just doing introduction still. Grade 7. Oh, yeah. Okay, let me check the time to see if we're gonna get started. Okay, no, we still have a bit of time, so we're gonna wait a bit. I'm continuing online school. Oh yeah, I'm doing online school as well. It's not that fun. It's a lot longer. It feels very long. Hello, Ayomide. So, are you? I'm not going to say it specifically just to keep it a secret for now. But are you doing the thing? Are you ready? No fun activities. Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay. Sure. That's great. Okay. Remember, I'm still doing my thing after it, so you don't have to worry too much. It's just the same thing you did last time, pretty much. And it was great. So yeah, I have a feeling it's gonna be great now. Classes are boring. Yeah. So are there any questions about what grade am I in? I'm in grade 10 now. I'm just in grade 10 now. School started Wednesday for me. Hello, Nadira. Thank you. I think my favorite grade of schooling was probably back in elementary. Those years were very fun for school. Okay, we're just gonna wait 3 more minutes because people are still joining. So yeah, we're gonna be getting started shortly. Okay, we're getting started in 1 minute. So any questions about last class? I believe we discussed tables last class or last camp. So yeah, did anybody have trouble trying to use tables? Did anybody try to use tables? Yeah. Because tables, the thing is, you might actually, it's possible you might not even need it on your web page. It's like something only certain web pages need if you need to display data. Okay. Okay, so it looks like it is time. Yeah, it is time to get started. So just to make sure everybody can hear me, I'm also going to turn on my camera just so you guys can notice me. And yeah, so if you guys see me shaking, it's a little bit cold in my house right now, so I might stumble a bit. But yeah, I got cold a lot faster this year. But anyways, we'll get started. So let me share my screen. Okay, so hopefully my screen's being shared as well on Google Meet. Okay, looks good. Okay, so welcome back. I believe this is the 5th day we've been learning HTML, and we've been doing a great job so far. We've learned a lot more components to our webpage. And yeah, so today we actually have a more interesting class because we have a special guest teaching us just at the beginning of the class. So yeah, you might have seen in chat, Ayomide, you said you were going to teach us a bit about whatever our topic we're talking about today, because Ayomide has actually gone through this camp once, I guess you could say, and yeah, she's getting ready to actually start teaching it to others. So yeah, Ayomide, you can unmute your mic. Do you have anything to say? I don't know if that was a good introduction. Yeah. Hey, Ayomide, you're the whole mentor now. You don't need to ask me to do anything. So remember, you can go for as long as you want. It's just at the beginning, and you don't have to worry because I'll also be talking after you as well. I'll be doing the normal camp as well, so don't worry too much. Okay, good guys. Remember, let me. I guess I'll stop presenting my screen. So yeah, remember to be respectful. Yeah, she's presenting, doing a great job. She didn't have to do this, but she is. So yeah. Okay, so we're just waiting on you, Ayumide. Yeah, I can tell by you guys both having the same last name, and I believe I already did know you guys were sisters, so that's cool. Yep, we can see your screen. Yeah, I can hear you. Um, no questions, I don't believe. Okay, so that was a great job, Ayomide. That was very great because we also have to remember or something to mention is I told Ayomide to do this very last minute, so that's my fault. But that was still very good job. So great job, Ayomide. Um, and yeah, good job. So I guess that leads me into my next topic. Let me just share my screen again. I need to go here. Screen. Okay, so that leads me into my next topic, which is talking more about, well, actually, why you're not teaching, because you guys might want to be teaching as well. And I specifically only gave this opportunity, or I gave this opportunity to Ayomide because she did present in the previous time she did the HTML camp, and I know she knows the subject, so she was able to teach it. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about how you can become a mentor and how you can start teaching, because this is going to be the future. This is a possible future once you complete this camp. But anyways, let me try to explain it better. Okay. So it starts off with learning HTML. Currently, right now, you guys are learning we're learning HTML together. Then after you learn HTML, if you think you're confident with HTML and you think you know something well, like Ayomide knows CSS, so you know something and you're ready to teach it, you can start teaching HTML. So of course you need to know something before you teach it. And then eventually, once you're teaching HTML, you're essentially a mentor. So what I'm doing currently is I'm teaching HTML and I'm a mentor. So once again, this I guess end game is pretty optional because you don't need to teach HTML if you don't want to. But if you're interested in it and you want to take maybe a leadership opportunity, you can come join learning with me and teach a subject like HTML per se. It can also be a different language if you go out and learn that and you learn it well, and then you think you're going to be able to teach it to others. And yeah, so it's like learn something and then be able to teach something. And then the last thing you're doing is going to be teaching people how to teach. So pretty much what you're doing there is that once you're the mentor, you're teaching people HTML, and then those people want to maybe go and teach HTML for themselves. So maybe you tell them about how they usually would want to present something or basic structure of a presentation. So yeah. So hopefully that makes sense of it. I don't know if I get a proper introduction to that. So this is basically talking about becoming a mentor, how you can become a mentor if you want. Because I did see in a couple of blocks that you guys want to become teachers when you grow up. So I think this is, if you want to become a teacher, this is a great like starting point or opportunity to start actually teaching people. So hopefully that makes sense. Of course, when you're actually teaching HTML, this was just a quick presentation here, but you'd actually be teaching your own class. So you'd have, or your own camp, sorry. So you'd have your own camp members. So yeah, you just basically be doing what I'm doing currently. So hopefully that makes sense of it. And I know a couple of you are interested in becoming mentors. So yeah, so currently, or once you are a mentor, you'll be on this next stage of teaching HTML. Then to do that, you'd also need to be taught how to teach properly. So hopefully that makes a bit more sense. Ayomide, I'm not sure, so I'm not going to say anything, but I believe you do want to become a mentor. I don't remember off the top of my head. Okay, yeah, so that's just, yeah, so Ayomide is here. She's practiced teaching you guys a tiny topic not tiny topic, a quick topic in HTML she could cover. And yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. So that's just talking about becoming a mentor, because once again, I saw that you guys do want to become teachers in futures, and that's just an optional, that's just an optional path you can take. You can try teaching something. Okay, anyways, so moving on, I'm going to be reteaching what Ayomide just taught us, so please don't mind me. So yeah, so some classes ago, we made a blog about ourselves. So this is kind of what the blog looked like. It had a title, it had text, it had an image, maybe it had a list, and it had more text. Okay, so something we can probably all admit is that this doesn't look too much like the websites we normally use. So I'm going to load up a website you might normally use. So actually, maybe just the website in general. So off the top of my head, we're going to go to TikTok.com. I'm not actually sure if that's a website. So TikTok.com. I hope that's their website. Okay, so yeah, we're on TikTok.com. I don't think you can actually use TikTok on the website. Maybe you can. We're not going to watch that. So anyways, we look at this website and it looks a lot different from the blog we'd previously made. So the reason this is the case is because these websites are using something called CSS. So we're going to head back to the presentation. So hopefully that makes sense so far. So we're talking about how our websites don't look as, maybe you could say, good as the other websites we use on a day-to-day basis. So our websites, they have good content. So they have, in this case, our blog has information about us. There's nothing wrong about the information we have. We even have an image, but the problem is it just doesn't look appealing. So maybe in, let me think. So you guys are in 7th and 6th grade, probably maybe when you've had to make a poster on something, you did a project and you had to make a poster. You're told to make your title really large. You were told to use a lot of maybe vibrant colors that stand out a lot. And yeah, you just want to make it look nice. And you do that by styling it. So to do the same thing in HTML, so to style our web page and make it look better, we would use CSS. And as Iomide said, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So what it stands for really isn't too important for us as long as we know that is a style sheet. So any questions about what I just said so far before we start getting more into it? Have we all had to maybe make a poster before and we had to style our poster and make it look nice? Have we done that? Yeah, okay. So hopefully that makes more sense. And that's basically what we're going to be doing with our HTML page. That's what pretty much every website we visit has on it. So just to show another example, so something as simple as, let me go on this web page. So something as simple as, I'm trying to think of a better example. So something as simple as changing the color of your text is styling your work in HTML. So yeah, we're going to be trying this for ourselves soon. I guess this webpage isn't a great example, but yeah, there is a lot of CSS on this webpage. We can tell because it just looks nice and we can see that things have borders. So maybe one thing we can show is maybe this like black bar down here. So this is styled with CSS. For this section of the page, the background is black, and then it also has a width and a height. So this is also styled with CSS. Just a lot of these things we're looking at are styled with CSS. It's just normal HTML, and then on top of it is a layer of styling, and then that's how it ends up looking nice like this. So yeah, let's go back to the presentation. So hopefully that makes sense about what we're using CSS for and what it does. So yeah, it's basically just your toolbox for styling your work. So maybe if you're comparing it to art class, it could be your art toolbox. I'm not sure. So yeah, I could have your painting palettes, your pencils, your rulers, and stuff like that. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll be keeping an eye on chat. Unappealing works takes a lot more time to imagine appeal. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, so another reason we want to use CSS, or I guess we're about to get into why we want to use CSS. So yeah, CSS helps makes our websites unique and stand out. So if we don't have CSS, if you were to view all the blogs we've created during the Chain Challenge, the blogs looked pretty similar, and the only thing different from them was the actual content in them. So if you're quickly going through them, you could easily say, oh, these are all the same. So CSS is what makes them unique. So maybe, for example, for myself, my name is Terry. We already know that. So maybe if I want to make something stand out, I'd use my favorite colors. It's going to be unique to me because I'm using my favorite colors. And my favorite colors maybe green. Okay. So yeah, it helps us style our websites and make them unique to us and make them stand out if we're good at styling stuff. So yeah. And making our website stand out makes it more appealing to viewers, so visitors on our website. It just looks nicer. And let's say you needed to find a website that will help you do something. Maybe the website helps you save your passwords and it's like a notebook for you. If the website looks really bad, if it doesn't look that nice and it's like just boring text, you probably wouldn't trust the website that much. But if the website maybe had a lot of styling on it and looked very professional, you'd be like, oh, okay, I can use this website without any doubt. So yeah, that hopefully makes sense. So CSS, yeah, it gives the web developers, which is us, the people developing websites, it gives us the opportunity to play with different, with a page's layout, adjust its colors and fonts, fonts being that type of the text type, I guess I'll say for now, and it lets us add effects to images, and it lets us do a lot more. So pretty much anything you can imagine to style on a web page, you can probably do with CSS. Okay, so here's just another analogy for using CSS. So we have two pictures, and these are just analogies for kind of what CSS does to your web page. So to the picture on the right, we have a picture with HTML only. Let me get out of that. And yeah, so we can see it's the main structure of the building. It's a building, obviously, you wouldn't want to go into. In this case, the image actually looks like it's being constructed right now. But yeah, it's something you don't want to visit. You don't probably even want to get near since it's under construction, and it looks like it's under construction. And yeah, so with CSS, looks a lot better. That's a building I would want to go inside and maybe go all the way to the top. And yeah, so hopefully that makes sense again with what CSS does to your web page. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about actually getting into writing our own CSS. So we're going to talk about CSS properties. So CSS properties determine what is being styled on your HTML element. So here are just some CSS properties. Colors a CSS property. You could be styling the color of an element, so maybe the color of your p tag. Font size is a CSS property. You can use it to style the size of your font. So your font is pretty much the type of, the type of decoration of text, I guess you could say. So we probably know what different fonts are. If we're not familiar, I'll have to show that later because I have to think of a better explanation. But yeah, we can style our width and height. We also remember those are just normal attributes in HTML for certain elements. And yeah, we can give borders. So these are just some CSS properties. So writing CSS. So there are three main ways of writing CSS and three main ways we can go about actually calling on our CSS. Because the thing about CSS is that actually the hardest part about writing CSS is probably just being able to call on it. So once you're able to call on CSS, you're not really learning too many new things. It's just more finding the CSS properties you want to use and using them correctly. So yeah, lucky for us, CSS isn't too much of a learning curve, I guess you'd say. Okay, so first method is external CSS files. So this means you're writing all the code for styling your work outside of your HTML document. So it's external, not internal. So yeah, using external CSS files makes it easier to maintain larger websites. Something else to note is that they can be applied to multiple documents while being managed from a single style sheet. So that may not make sense now again, but we'll actually be trying this ourselves in the future just to show how it works. And yeah, so the downsides is that attaching your CSS file may be difficult at first. So pretty much the hardest part about this method, external CSS files, is pretty much just attaching your external CSS file to your external HTML document. So hopefully that makes sense. Once again, if there are any questions going through, I'll be sure to answer them. So I'm looking at chat. Something else to note is that if it's, you should ask questions, but you should also remember that I'm not going to keep going too far ahead of you guys because we probably do not understand this, so I'm breezing through this a little bit faster. But yeah, we're going to be trying this for ourselves as well. So if you have any misunderstandings about what it's going to do, we'll get to do it for ourselves. Okay. So here's a code example of what it looks like. We don't need to look at the code right now. We more or less just need to pay attention to the differences, what this method does. So we have our HTML document where we're writing our HTML, and we have our CSS document where we're writing CSS. So we'll ignore this code for now. Hello, someone is not listening to me. I have a question. Okay, what's your question, Brian? I guess we'll pause over here. Did I miss any other questions? Oh, people are sharing their TikToks. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so Which okay, so I'm actually going to showcase that in a minute, but just to say for now, on Solo Learn Code Playground, you can actually what we're gonna, I think you asked what we're gonna be using to, if we're gonna write external CSS, how we're gonna do it with what we're using currently. So two things to note is that in the future, we're gonna be leaving Code Playground. We're gonna actually start writing our code the same way you see professionals building websites do it. So we're gonna be using something called a proper text editor. Something else to know is that in Solo Learn's Code Playground, you can actually simulate what it's like to be using an external CSS file. So we'll actually be able to do that. The only difference is that since we're using Code Playground, we don't actually have to do the process of attaching the external CSS file, but we can still get the same effect. Okay, so that's what the code looks like. It's just two different documents, one that contains your CSS code and one that contains your HTML code. So the HTML document is what we're already familiar with, and we're used to adding stuff to it. Okay, the second method is internal CSS. So this is the opposite of external. So what this basically means is that our CSS code is within our HTML document. So the way this is done is a little bit different. So we actually use a tag called style, and we put it in the head tag, and there's where we start styling. So remember, we're not talking about styling yet. We haven't really talked about the code used for styling, but we're going to be doing that soon. So the benefits is that it's somewhat simplistic because you don't have to go through the process of trying to connect two files together. And the downside is that all of your code is crunched into one HTML document. So if it's crunched into one HTML document, that just adds a lot more lines of code, I guess you could say, and it just makes reading it a lot more difficult. And yeah, it's better to be more organized and have things separated. And yeah, so yeah. So we're not going to show an example of that because there's an example right here. So yes, this is what it looks like. It's just within our HTML document. So this is our HTML document. We have our HTML code, and we use the style tag to actually put in our CSS code. So it's internal, and it's within the HTML document. So the next thing is actually also within our HTML document, but we call this inline CSS. Okay, so the benefits of inline CSS is that it's even more simplistic than internal CSS. So if you want to use CSS for the first time, or maybe you're making a quick example or you're trying to test something quickly with CSS, probably the fastest way you can do it is by using inline CSS. So once again, the benefits is that it's even more simplistic. Yeah, it's great to use for extremely simple websites, but then the downsides now. So if you're not building an extremely simple website, so for example, maybe a very simple website or something we'll say was simple, we define as simple for now, is maybe only using the p tag once in our website. And yeah, so we could say that's simple. So if we want to style it, maybe change the color, using inline CSS would be really fast and easy. So the downside, so maybe we had 20 p tags, so we had 20 different paragraphs on our web page. That means we'd have to be individually styling each one over and over again, meaning we'd have to write a lot more code, and that just takes a lot more time as well. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Any questions so far before I continue on? Hopefully that makes sense so far. So once again, it's called inline because it's within our lines of code. It's directly in the line that we want to style. So we have the P element here, and then we're styling it within that same line using the style attribute, which is used for the inline CSS. So we actually haven't talked about using it again, so don't worry, but we're actually going to be getting ready to use it soon. So yeah, this is a great method to use if you're doing something very simple. If you have a lot of stuff on your web page that needs to be styled, using inline CSS is going to take a lot more work. It's possible, but it will be a lot more work and a lot more time. And we don't want to do more work than necessary. Okay. So this is a blog I've updated. So I had my previous blog that we looked at, and I pretty much was like just dedicating 4 minutes to trying to style my work. I was able to make my blog look the way I wanted it to look. So it's debatable if it looks nice. I don't think I actually like this design too much. It's debatable if it looks nice, but this is just an example of styling our work. So we can compare it to the original one we had. We're going to have to go a couple slides back up. Compare it to this one over here. So this original blog, and we can go all the way back, like head over here to this new blog. And yeah, so you can tell I've made it more unique to me. So I can more say, yeah, this is my blog. And you'll notice it because I had a black background and my text was blue. So this is some simple styling I've done. And yeah, so one thing you can notice, or maybe I'm not going to say that. You guys can point it out to me. So first, let me put this in the chat. Yeah, sure. I'll put the link in chat if you'd like to see it for yourselves. But yeah, so something you'll notice, I'll open it up myself as well. If I don't, yeah, I don't have it open up. I've put the link in chat. Something else you will notice when you go here. Actually, I'll let you guys tell me what method of CSS this is. Let me go full screen as well. Okay, so something else you'll notice is that I actually only have HTML code here. So by the way, something to mention is that this is how it simulates external CSS. We have external documents here, you could say. So our code's all on different pages. So you guys don't see any CSS code on in my HTML code. So could somebody tell me what method I'm using to do this? Is CSS harder than HTML? If it were me answering this, because there are probably people who may get mad at me if I say it's not, but if it's me saying this, in my opinion, I think it's a lot less learning than HTML. Because in HTML, you have to learn a lot of things to do one thing. With CSS, as long as you get the idea, because there's pretty much, you learn how to write CSS, which is just one thing. And then after that, you just learn more CSS properties so you can do more styling. Yes. Oh, thank you. I did not notice that. Thank you. I'll change that here as well. I'll have to save this then. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, good. Fix my block. The color of the fonts. So changing the font color, or just, we call that, or changing the font color is a CSS property called color. So anyways, before I actually tell you more about that and we look at it for ourselves, can somebody tell me what method of, what CSS method I'm using, how I'm getting my CSS to show up on my HTML page? Is this internal CSS? Because we can see we still get the same output. Pardon? External CSS. Okay, great. So yeah, this is external CSS because we'll zoom in here and we can see, first of all, that we don't have any CSS in our actual HTML code. And then we can see that if we go to the CSS document now, so this is what it's simulating, the CSS document, HTML document, is something else called JavaScript. So this is used to do something else that we might talk about in the future. Okay, so CSS is what we care about right now, and it's for styling. So I put all my style code within here. So for now, once again, I want you not to really pay attention, or I guess you can pay attention to how the code works. I haven't explained it yet, so you can if you'd like to. But then these individual things we're seeing here, so background color. Down here, color, font family, text line, padding bottom, color, and then just all of these things we're seeing, these are CSS properties. So somebody asked, how do you change the color of your text? So that's changed with the CSS property color. So that's a CSS property, and that CSS property is basically used to just define what specific thing you're styling. So you can style the color of something, you can style the height of something, you can style the font family of something. And yeah, so what is the div tag? Okay, so I want you to skip the div tag now, actually, because that's a whole other lesson. And I'm not sure, let me see if we're gonna have time to discuss that. Yeah, that's a whole other lesson, so we're gonna skip that for now. The div tag, watch this actually. So I'm gonna do something just to make sure this is gonna work as planned. Okay, so to put it simply, with the div tag, you can basically create your own element that you can call on later. So that's pretty much just what I did. So you can say it's short for divider. And yes, this is a whole lesson of its own, so don't pay attention to that too much. I'm going to style something from scratch again, and I won't be using the div tag. This is just for what it looks like to style your work more or less. Okay, so this is what it looks like styled. Once again, as you can see, it's better than my other one because it's more unique. How is it moving? Okay, this is actually something that's my fault. I should have not done this. But this is called a GIF, and a GIF is like a moving image. So it keeps looping over and over again. So that's called a GIF. So I guess it looks like we do have time, so we can actually just keep learning more and more things. So let's get a full screen here. So you can literally search up something and you can probably find a GIF with it. So you can go, oh yeah, it is a GIF. Yeah, you got it right. I spelled GOIF. So yeah, that's just basically a moving image. So there are GIFs of different things. You can search up something specific and find a GIF for it. So I can probably search up walking. Walking GIF. And you can find moving images. So at first it's like this because you're just looking on the outside, but when you press into it, like this one here, you see that it's moving. So this is what you call a GIF. So you can pretty much grab the GIF address the same way you would grab it for a normal image. So you can just grab the location of it and then you put the URL in your page. So I'll just test it out here quickly. So yeah, this is called a GIF. It's different. Not really adding anything to our CSS code. So this is not related to CSS. This is just something called a GIF. So 1 second, actually, I need to check something quickly. Okay, so yeah, that's what a GIF is. And yeah, so that has nothing to do with my CSS code. So let me actually turn off my notifications. Sorry for that. Just so we can stop being bothered. Okay, so we're going to stick to what we're doing. So this is a jellyfish. Just to keep it more simple so we can get a better understanding, I'm actually going to switch out this image with something else because I guess I should have actually not used a GIF. So we're going to switch this out with I said GIF again. Jellyfish. We're just going to put a picture of a jellyfish. And yeah, so you can go explore GIFs on your own if you would like to. Copy image address. We're just going to switch out this URL here. So we're already familiar with this. So yeah, now we need to get into talking about actually creating our own CSS code and actually styling our work. So we're going to head back to our presentation now, and we're going to get into that. Keep the GIF. I changed the GIF because you might think it's using CSS, but it's actually not using any CSS. You'll still see the GIF there because I didn't save it, but yeah. Okay, so new term. So before we can actually start writing our CSS, all that stuff I was telling you to ignore, that's because we haven't learned these new terms yet. So once again, ignore the GIF. That's just more confusing it up more. I should have not used that. And yeah, so please ignore the GIF. You can learn about that on your own if you'd like, or we can talk about it after class. Okay, so we have to discuss some new terms again to actually get started on writing our CSS. So the first term is the colon. So the colon has one main universal use in pretty much everywhere you see a colon, and it's used to show that something is following after it. In literature, so in writing, something like a quotation, example, or list. So I'll use the colon here. So maybe you've seen something like click here. So pay attention to chat right now. Maybe you've seen something like that. So you had text and then you had a colon following it. So that colon says this text has something following after it that's going to pay attention. Yeah, my hobbies. Yeah, that's a great example. So that's what a colon is. You have to use shift and to activate a colon, and it's beside the LT key. So my types of fish. Okay, yeah, so that's a colon. My favorite books. Yes, that's how you use a colon. So it's used to show something's following after it. So in CSS, we have our CSS property, then we have our colon. So we're saying this CSS property is equal to blah, or we want to style this CSS property like this. So yeah, my name. Yeah, so those are all great examples of using colons. So next is the semicolon. So in programming and different coding languages, the semicolon is used to separate statements. And yeah, so by statements, I mean instructions essentially. So to break things up is what it does. So if you're saying something, so you're going blah, 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 blah. So like do this and this and this, it's basically the semicolon says stop. So don't do that anymore and take a break. So move on to the next thing. So blah, 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 and then breaks and move on to the next thing. So if you don't have the semicolon there with CSS, it's going to assume everything you're writing after it is all together. It's not separate statements. So this might not make sense now, but we're going to be trying this ourselves shortly. Okay. So next we are talking about curly brackets. So curly brackets are used to indicate that a group of lines are grouped together, so they should be listened to all together. And yeah, so curly brackets are also known as accolades or braces. So there's not much to say about these. These just basically kind of do the same thing that parentheses do, except we specifically use curly brackets in CSS. Okay. Why chilling? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense so far. So once again, we're going to look at inline CSS now, the first method we discussed last time, the one that's the most simplistic and easiest to use. So this is what we're going to be using first to start with. Okay, I'll change out that image in a second. Okay, so we have our p tag, that's what we want to style, and then we're actually using an attribute. So could somebody tell me what attribute they see being used here? Just the attribute name. Style, okay, yeah. Okay, yep, so style is the attribute being used here. So this is a new attribute to us, and as you can guess, we use it to style our work. So when we use a style attribute, we're basically calling on inline CSS, or we're using the inline CSS method. So it's just a simple attribute usually. So we have we're simple format. So it's the attribute, the equal signs, and then we have the quotations. So now, anybody looking at the quotations is where it starts getting a little bit more interesting. So we have our color. So we have our CSS property to start. So there are many CSS properties. You can search up CSS properties for specific things you're trying to do or specific things you want to style. So yeah, so in this case, color is one of the more simple CSS properties, and it changes the color of things. So we're going to call on our CSS property first. So in this case, it's color. We're going to have our colon to show that something's following after it. And then whatever's following after it is the value. So in this case, the value for color, what we're assigning it is red. So we can actually just type in red here, and then we're done. But we're actually not done. Because to actually say we're done, we need to put a semicolon and say, yep, that's all we're doing. So we're going to try this for ourselves first. So let's start off with this. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm just going to press on Code Playground. I guess we can open up another one. We're going to go full screen. We're going to be writing some new code. Okay, so yeah, color green, that's a great example. So let's zoom in here. We're just going to be focusing specifically on the code we're writing. So we're in our body tag, of course, because that's where our content's going. In this case, we want to style our P tag. So my favorite color, let's say, is red here now for some reason. So I want to make all the text here red. So first, let's see what it looks like without this, of course, so we can just know I'm not pulling any tricks. So I'm going to say this text is red. So that is my text here. We're going to zoom out just so we can run this code. So I'll press run. And we see the text, this text is red. So right now, of course, this text isn't red, but it's about to be red with what we're going to do. Okay, so now the next thing we can know off the bat is that since it's inline CSS, we're immediately going to call on the style attribute, which is style. And we already know how an attribute works, so we put the equal signs and quotations. So pretty much the hardest part about this is what goes in between the quotations, because it's not like most of the things we've done so far. So remember, the first thing we put is the CSS property. So in our case, the CSS property, so what we want to style specifically about this P tag, what we want to style about the P tag is its color. So we put in the CSS property called color because that is a real CSS property in HTML. So we put our color, and that's our CSS property. Next, to show that we want to set the color equal to something and that something's following after it. So this is the following color. We put the colon. Okay, yeah, so this is actually in between the quotations. This is not an attribute. So yeah, it makes sense that this is in between the quotations because style is just everything that's being styled for this attribute. And then in between here is where we start getting more specific. So this is inline CSS, and you'll tell for many reasons why we wouldn't want to be using this in more larger web pages. Okay, so back to the point. So we have our CSS property color, we have our colon, and then we have our value. So in this case, we're actually going to be talking about this shortly, but in this case, we can actually just say our color is red. So our HTML document will recognize red and it knows that it's a color. So it will display red. So can somebody tell me what I'm missing to be complete, or am I done? Okay, you're right. I am not done. I am missing my semicolon. Yep, you're correct. Okay, so I add my semicolon just to say the color. So pretty much what the semicolon does, you can pretty much compare it to a period in writing. So in this case, we're saying the color is red. And then we say period. Yep. Colons are used to show that something's following after it, and semicolons are basically used to end the statement. So to basically put a period at the end. So we're gonna, just to show it a little bit better. So ignore what I'm writing here. This isn't actually proper HTML. I'm just using this as a basic text editor. So we have color red, and this basically translates to the color should be red. That's what we're styling. So this says the color should be red. So with the period here, we're basically closing it off and we're ending the sentence, or in this case with the semicolon, we're ending the statement. So for now, we're just gonna leave it like this. So ignore this code. I think I can actually comment this out. So if you remember how to comment things, wrong symbol. We're going to comment this out for now because we don't want it to do anything on our HTML page. So we're just going to say this is a comment. That's a trick you can do sometimes. So we're commenting this out. It's commented out now. And then we're going to run our work just so we can see the output. So we have color is red, period. Nothing else about color red. So we're going to run our work. And we see that the text is now red. So that's pretty much, we just styled our work and we use the CSS property color to do this. So you can use multiple CSS properties for one element as well. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay. So I do know this property, but just to make it, just to kind of show you guys what I'm trying to say when I say CSS is more just once you learn the syntax, which is how you write it, you pretty much just go and search for your specific properties. So it's not working. So this, it might not be working depending if you have everything correct, so you follow the correct format. You might not be working because you're not using a color that is recognized. So we're actually talking about fixing that later. But yeah, tell me what color you're trying to use and maybe try it with a color like red. Anyways, pink. So I'll test this out here. I'm not sure if that's gonna be recognized, honestly, because I don't remember ever using pink, but there's something else we can do to get those colors. That leads us into a future topic. But anyways, we have pink. I'm gonna run this. And it looks like pink is recognized. So you might have something wrong here. Maybe you're missing a closing tag or the closing quotation. Make sure you have everything correct. But anyways, I'm just going to show you guys what it looks like when you're trying to use CSS. So maybe you learned CSS, you know how to write it, but the only CSS property you know is color. You only know how to change the color of things. So something you can easily do in this case is that you can maybe just search up CSS property, because we know we want to style something specific. So CSS property, and then we'll say change text size, because that's the CSS property we need. So luckily for us, we can immediately see all of these results. So you can see, I'm just going to press on the first one because I know this website, W3 Schools. And yeah, so it tells us about the CSS property font size. So it looks like this is used to set the font size for different elements. So pretty much I just say, oh, okay, I need that CSS property to do what I want to do. I can copy it, so font size, or I'll just write it myself over here. We're in this tab actually. So we're going to go back to full screen and we're going to switch it out now. So font size. So that's how we write the CSS property for font size. We use a hyphen over here to combine the two words. So we still have our colon to show something's following after it. But in this case, now we're saying the font size should be pink. So that doesn't make sense, right? So we know this value is going to be a different type of value. It's no longer going to be just saying a color. We're going to be saying a size. So we know we use measurements or we use measuring units to do that. So we can use centimeters. We can use pixels, which is one you'll probably see most often being used. And yes, we just need to use a measuring unit. So in this case, I'm just going to say pixels. So we're going to say the font size should be 40 px. Px is short for pixels, kind of how like cm is short for centimeters. So we're going to say 40 px. So the font size should be 40 pixels. We're going to press run. We'll look at our output here. I no longer am styling the color, but we see our text is a lot bigger without using the H1 tag. So any questions about that so far? Yes. You can use it to, the style attribute is used for adding style to the specific element you have it in. So anything we can style is using any CSS property we know about. So there are tons and tons of CSS properties. I probably don't even know probably even 2/10 of them. So I do not know a lot of CSS properties, but though I do know the ones I need to use currently. So style is used to call in a CSS property and style something about it. So in this case, the only thing that's really important to us after the style attribute is just the CSS property we're using. So what I showed you is how you can just go and search for CSS properties and how it's kind of a lot more simple than HTML because it's basically just more of what you want it to do. So it's no longer about having something being correct, if that makes sense. So anyways, what we're going to do, we're going to switch this back to color quickly. I'm going to try something. You guys have to tell me what is wrong about this. So we know red is recognized as a color. And then what I'm going to do now is I can actually add another CSS property. So we're just going to use that one we just found, font size. And I'm going to set that equal to what? I'll make it a lot smaller now. I'll set it equal to 5px. Okay, so can somebody tell me if this is going to work as I intend? So it will work as I intend. Is that what you're saying? Okay, well, no problem. It's all right if you're not too sure of the answer because remember, we can just translate our stuff into English. So remember how we can just say the color is red. So let's do this here. So we'll say the color is, because we have color and then we have the colon shift, something's following after it. But then here, notice we don't have a semicolon. So what we're saying is that the color is red, font style, font size, 5px. So that's what we're saying. And then we have our semicolon at the end to end it. So what we're saying is that the color is, let me remove this here because that's actually not correct. Let's see. So we'll just go like this, I guess. So the color is red, font size, 5 pixels. So that's basically what we've written here, because we have our CSS property color and we're missing our semicolon, so we're not ending it off. So watch what happens when we run this code since we're missing our semicolons. So we run our code and we see that it does nothing to our H2. It does nothing. No styling happens because we're missing our semicolon, and we've tried to style something, but we didn't give the color property a real value. We didn't give it a value that's recognized, because red font size 5px is not a real color. You wouldn't say this color to anybody. So we use our semicolon to end it off and basically add a period. So now what we're saying is that the color is red, and we're saying the font size is 5px, period. So hopefully that makes sense of why it's so important to have our, semicolons. Hopefully that makes sense. Sorry, I think I missed a question. You said, I don't think, I'm not sure. I don't get it. Okay, so we're gonna try explaining this one last time. So could somebody ask me a question so I could try answering, so I know where to start from? So what part did I lose you? Before we continue on. Okay, so I'll wait for your response. If I didn't lose anybody else, we'll just keep going, I guess. So we use the style attribute just to confirm everything. We use the style attribute to say that we want to style stuff. And then in here, we put our CSS property so we can actually say what we're specifically styling. So in this case, we're styling color. That's our CSS property. We assign it a value, and we put a semicolon, which is basically our period. So we say color is red, period. And then after that, we move on to our next statement. So we have font size now. That's our next CSS property. We have our colon to show if something's following after it. So we're saying the font size is, and we have our value coming after. So 5px. So so 5px. And we have our semicolon to add the period again. So if we're missing the semicolon here, now what we're saying is this. We're no longer saying we're no longer starting a new statement. We're saying the color is red, font size is 5px. So that didn't sound right when I said that, but that's literally what we wrote here if we have our code like this. So the period is very important. And yeah, so the semicolon is very important. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions so far before I move on? If somebody could write yes and no for me, just so I can know I can continue on, that'd be good. Okay, no questions. Okay, we're moving on. If you have any questions, ask them now. Okay, so let's move on. So let's show a scenario for why we wouldn't want to use inline CSS. So we're getting close to wrapping up now, but let's just do this quickly. Okay, so let's remove our CSS, our style attribute here. And we're going to copy and paste this a couple times. So in this case, we only had one paragraph, so it was very simple to just use the inline CSS method. So we copy and paste this a couple times. Now we have, this is text, this text is red, this text is red, this text is red. So look, I want to style all of these since they're all the p tag and they all have the same content. I want to style them all to be the same color. So I'm just going to do what we did last time, style the attribute, quotations. And I'm just going to put the CSS property, color, red, and then close it off. So that should be good enough, right? We'll run our work. But then we see that only this top one's red. Only the one we actually styled is, okay. So yeah, only the one we styled is red. And once again, with using inline CSS, that means we're going to have to write it over and over and over for each one. And this is only the case where we only have, what is this, 6? Yeah, this is only the case when we have 6 paragraphs. And most web pages will probably have a lot more than 6 elements to be styled. They have a lot more elements being used. So I'd have to keep going like this over and over again, and it's just a lot of work. So that is inline CSS, and we completely learned that, hopefully. So on your own, when you're styling, you probably want to go find more CSS properties. You can look at the code I pasted there. You can see the properties I used and style them for yourselves. But yeah, so that is inline CSS. So the next thing we're going to cover, actually, we can actually speed through this one a lot faster because we've already learned the basic concepts. So for this one, we're using something called the style tag, and this is the internal CSS method. Yeah, this will be tried for the homework. So this is the internal CSS method. So we have style. We use the style tag. So it's internal because once again, it's still within the document, except now we're not using inline because it's not within the same line of the element. So we have style, opening and closing tags, and then we put our CSS code. So it's pretty much actually the basic, or it's pretty much the same format, I guess you could say. Sorry. So we have our CSS property to start off with again. So pretty much the only thing to note here is that we're using the style tag. So in between here, we can put our CSS property. So color, because remember that is a CSS property. Or actually, sorry, before we even do that, we need to put what element we're styling. So let me create a p tag here quickly. I'll put a bunch of random stuff in here. And we need to tell, since this is not within the actual p tag itself, we're not using an attribute on the p tag, we have to tell it exactly what we want to style. So in this case, we're styling specifically the p tag. So all we do is write p. Okay, so next we're going to be collecting a group of lines. We're going to be collecting a bunch of lines for the p tag. So to do that, remember we use the curly brackets. We have p, curly bracket, closing curly bracket. So it's saying p, and then all of these stuff and all of these lines are to be taken with it. So pretty much from here, we just do the stuff we've been doing before. So we do the CSS property, color, and then we assign it a value. So maybe red, and then we can do something else on the next line. So we also use semicolons once again to put a period and end that statement. So for now, we'll leave it like this, and we can look at the code again. So we have our element, we have our opening curly bracket, then we have whatever styling information we have, which would be our CSS property and the values assigned to them. And then we have our closing curly bracket. So if we're missing our closing curly bracket, we're basically saying this p just doesn't end. It keeps going on and on. So we want to have that here. So I'm speeding up a bit because we're getting close to time. Yeah, closing curly bracket. So I'm looking out for questions as well. So if you have any questions, I'll be sure to answer them. So p, opening curly bracket, styling information here. Remember CSS property, value, semicolon to period it, and closing curly bracket. So we'll run this now. And we get our p tag as red. So actually, if you want to translate this code as well, since we've been doing that for the inline CSS, with this, we're saying let all the p tags be the color red. So if I copy and paste this again, add another p tag like this, and I maybe I'll just change up the wording red so we can see. That's also going to be red. So all the p tags now, so all the things that use the p element in our HTML document are going to be the color red. So lastly, let me check the time. So we're 1 minute overboard, but we're literally about done. So last thing is last. So we're going to use the external CSS method. So we're not actually learning anything after we already know the inline and internal CSS method. So say we have our inline CSS here. We're just not going to take the style tags. We're just going to copy our inline or internal CSS method. We're just going to delete this for now because it's something else. And we literally just copy and paste our code. So this is basically doing the exact same thing as internal CSS, except now it's in a different document. And since it's in a different document, we don't have to use the style tags. We don't have to use opening and closing style tags. So hopefully that makes sense. We're just going to wrap up the class, and I'll ask you guys if you have any questions. And yeah. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So internal, external over here, and we can have inline, which is using the style attribute. Something else to note to remember is that the style tag has to go within the head tag for it to be used properly. And we might talk about why that is in the future. So always put the style tag in the head tag. Okay. So hopefully we've learned all of these. We did a lot of learning today. So if you have any questions, it makes sense to have questions now. If you don't have any questions, that's also good. Or yeah, so let's go. We've discussed all of these, and now we're on to extra activities. So, what I would like you guys to do, just to expand your knowledge on CSS properties, I would like you to find 3 more CSS properties for me, and then put them in within the Google document attached to the extra activities. The next thing I would like you to do is actually play around with CSS for yourselves. So the simplest thing I would like you guys to do is using Solar's Code Playground, write code that makes the P element appear as any color you like. For this, you can use any method you want. So you can use inline, internal, or external CSS. So the last thing, this is, in my opinion, the most important out of all of these extra activities. I would like you guys to start brainstorming for a presentation you want to do. So in the future, I guess just to say it straight up, so in the future, you guys are going to be just doing maybe something like Iomede's lesson, so maybe 5 minutes long, and you're going to be just teaching any topic within HTML. So you can go out and learn something new, and then you can come teach it to us, or you can just do something we've already discussed. So maybe you want to do a presentation on the li and ul tags and how we use them. That's great. So yeah, start brainstorming for a presentation you would like to do. So any questions about any of these extra activities? Can we make presentations of GIFs? This time, no. This time you cannot make a presentation of a GIF. Maybe you can do that if you're gonna make a presentation of a GIF, you have to share the whole history of GIFs. And yeah, it's gonna be a lot more work than doing this. So you can just share something you already know. Do we have to make the presentations? I think it's best if you make a presentation. I hope you're not confusing it. So your presentation, it's not going to be as long as what I'm doing here. So it's not going to be an hour long, but it's going to be like what Iomide did today. So it's just going to be 5 minutes long. Iomide did a topic before we actually discussed it because she knows the topic. And yeah, she talks about CSS. So you could do anything we discussed so far. So it can be the li, the ul tag. That's just an example. It can maybe be the p tag if you have a lot to say about it. You can also talk about CSS if you would like, and maybe some new CSS properties you found and you want to teach us about, because I'm always willing to learn about CSS properties. Can you explain further on number 2? So pretty much number 2, this is just being a lot more specific what it says here, but pretty much what I want you to do is just style something in your HTML document. So the simplest thing you could do, the minimum you could do is just style the P element and make it appear as any color you would like. So hopefully that makes sense. So you're just styling anything in your HTML document that we can see on the output. So you can just change the color of the P tag and make it red. And yeah, so this last sentence saying using any method, use any method you want for applying CSS. That means you can use the style attribute, the first method we discussed. You can use the style tags. That's another method, or you can use the external CSS, which is in a different document. Internal and external CSS. So if you know what internal and external means it's like outside of something, and then internal means it's within it. So yeah, you can pretty much ignore those words. Those words aren't, or they're nice words to know, I guess. But for now, you can just translate it. But anyways, so if we're saying internal, we're meaning it's within something. So in this case, if it's internal CSS, we're writing it within the HTML document. For external CSS, that means it's outside of the HTML document and it's its own file. So it's in a CSS file. So it's completely outside of our HTML code. Yes, you can do your presentation next week. For now, I was just planning to get you guys brainstorming. But yeah, it'll be possible. So yeah, it's on a topic in HTML. It can be something new, but if it's going to be something new, you have to make sure you actually understand it, or it can be something we've already discussed. So yeah, hopefully that answers any questions. Those are the extra activities. It's optional for you if you'd like to do another presentation. And yeah, if you want to do one, if you are going to do one, don't do it on CSS. Do it on something else now since you've mastered CSS. Okay. Okay, so that's wrapping up the camp, guys. Good job today. Hopefully, we know how to style our work now. It's all right if you only it the minimum if you came out with at least knowing how to change the color of your text, that's good enough. So you complete today's class. So hopefully you can update your blogs now and make them look nicer and save your work as well. Okay, so bye guys, good job. And yeah, so I believe I'm staying here for a bit longer with Brian and Malachi. So just 1 second. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I hope you guys update your blogs. I'd be happy if you just sent it to me. Actually, just post it on Google Classroom. I'll be sure to look at it if you want to share your blogs. Uh, 1 second. Okay. So I guess we're waiting a bit longer. Does any classes ended, guys? So I'm not sure if you guys have questions, but yeah. Because I believe Brian and Malachi. Okay. So 1 more second, please. I'm waiting on something. Okay, there we go. Okay. So Brian, Malachi, I called you guys after class because I was thinking that with your participation in class and the great help you guys have been doing, I was wondering if you guys were more interested in becoming mentors. So you guys can actually unmute your mics. We don't need to talk to your chat anymore since it's just us three. Okay, so that would actually be great. So Brian, just to make sure you guys are interested. So Brian, are you interested in becoming a mentor? Someone's gonna just teaching HTML to others again, basically just taking my role. Pardon? You think you won't be able to? Would it be good? You don't think you'll be able to because you're very busy? Okay. So yeah, you have. Oh, okay. Okay, that's all right if you're busy. But I was asking because I think you guys, well, yeah, outside of the other people I've already talked to you about becoming a mentor, I think you guys would make particularly good mentors because you guys are participating and you guys are helping, right? So yeah, I think you guys would make good mentors. And yeah, you guys are also showing your knowledge with the stuff you do. So yeah, Malachi, you're interested. So we can actually talk more about that once I guess you could say this course comes to an end. So just 1 second again, 1 second. And yeah, so we're gonna have to talk about more about becoming a mentor in the future. So the first things to do first is to probably do these presentations. So Malachi, you said you want to go next week. That's how it's gonna be great practice for you. And yeah, so Brian, I think you should take more thought to think about becoming a mentor because it's actually not as time consuming as you believe. Because you can use already existing presentations. Pretty much the main part about being a mentor is just being that person in the call who can answer questions. So if somebody asks you questions, you should be able to help them. So I think maybe you can think on it longer. You're not, of course, if you would like to and you want to go the extra mile, you can create your own presentation style to the way you like it. You can even just take stuff out of my presentation and put it yours. It's not just doing research again. So yeah, it's just pretty much being there to help people. And yeah, so Malachi, I've seen you've been helping people. You've been helping people for the past couple of classes do things. And yeah, so I think you guys would make great mentors. So we'll have to talk about that later. And yeah, so that's pretty much all I wanted to say to you guys. Otherwise, that's the end of the camp. Good job today, guys. Bye. Goodbye.